Are you keeping up with the latest in workplace health and safety in Australia? Psychosocial safety is now more important than ever, with new regulations emphasising the duty of care to prevent psychological harm. Join us on the 29th of August for a rapid fire webinar hosted by two Flourish DX experts as we tackle these pressing challenges and pave the way for future best practices in psychosocial safety. Gain insights on beyond engagement surveys by learning how to more accurately quantify psychosocial risks. Discover strategies for improving the governance of psychosocial safety. Understand how to provide ongoing monitoring of psychosocial hazards and the effectiveness of controls. And determine the prerequisites for empowering line managers to take ownership of psychosocial safety. This webinar is a must for any health and safety or HR professional dedicated to creating a safer, more productive work environment. Don't miss out on this vital opportunity. Register now to ensure your organisation takes the lead in psychosocial safety. Visit www.flourishdx.com to register. See you there. Now on to this episode.
Every generation has different views and expectations in the workplace. While there's often youthful energy around being treated properly at work, it's often lacking in an understanding of the rights and responsibilities they have from a safety perspective. We'll talk with a safety professional that's on a mission to get safety information to younger generations. Up next on this episode of the Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. From Flourish DX, this is the Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. As workplace mental health has become a global priority, there's a greater focus on addressing psychosocial hazards. Each week, we look at psychological safety from an occupational health and safety perspective. Let's talk psychological health and safety. Well, welcome to this week's Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. I. David Daniels, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Each week, we seek to increase awareness of the importance of psychological health and safety by learning from the lived experiences, research, and expertise of our guests, as well as advocating strategies to reduce harm and minimize vulnerability to psychosocial hazards in the American workplace. So in 2022, Travelers, the largest workers' compensation insurer in the United States, released a 2022 injury impact report that analyzed more than 1.5 million workers' comp claims over a 5-year period from 2015 to 2019. And the study revealed that 35% of workplace injuries occur during a worker's first year on the job, highlighting the importance of comprehensive onboarding and training programs for employees, especially in the pandemic era where there's been considerable movement in the labor market. New workers are often exposed to both psychosocial and physical hazards because they don't know how to recognize either one. My guest for this episode is working to see that this has changed by ensuring that basic safety training is available to students before they graduate high school. So let's start the conversation, as I so often do, with an introduction of my guest by my guest with this question. Who is Dr. Jermaine Hunter?
Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Daniels, for having me on the show today. Jermaine Hunter, Dr. Jermaine Hunter. I like to just go by Jermaine. I am a Washingtonian, born and raised in Washington, D.C., football enthusiast. Love football. And a 30-year safety and health professional in the Washington, D.C. area. I actually worked for Travelers for a number of years, so definitely familiar with a lot of the studies and the things that they have done over the years to actually advance the profession. But yeah, I'm just a dedicated safety and health professional, one of the few minorities that's in the field, and I'm very passionate about ensuring safety and health for myself, obviously, as well as for my coworkers and the other folks that we serve in the community. So yeah, that's me. That's me.
Oh, right on, right on. Yeah, and it was my pleasure to meet you early in 2024 at a conference we were both attending, and you know how sometimes you meet people like they're across the room, you kind of the slow music, and you run towards one another. You go like, "Hey!" uh, I yeah, but I certainly I appreciate getting to know you and know a little bit more about you. But I'm going to find out more today, and I have one more standard question though that I ask folks when they come on, which is, what does psychological health and safety mean to you?
I think psychological safety and health, or health and safety, just means even if you think back to OSHA's general duty clause, where it's just, you know, an employee has the right to a safe and healthful work environment. And I think just having that mental state, that to know that when you come to work, outside of yourself, someone else is looking out for you. Someone else is putting you, easing your mind, and letting you know, hey, I got you. You go do what what your gift is, what your talent is, and you don't have to worry about all of those other things that come around, come about, because we have established a place of safety, be it again mentally and physically. So that's kind of how I see that term.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, as you mentioned a little bit, and I've certainly commented on this show, uh, the occupational health and safety profession is not the most diverse group that I've been around. A lot of good people, excellent people, but it is fairly homogeneous, which means uh, when I was a kid, I never saw. First of all, I didn't know that occupational safety and health was a thing. I started out in the fire rescue service, and I'd never seen a firefighter that looked like me either. So, in a lot of the safety professions, they are, again, because they're fairly homogeneous. Young kids don't look up and go like, "I want to be one of those someday." So, what got you interested in health and safety?
Yeah, so so good question. I think what happened for me, I went to Slippery Rock University, Western Pennsylvania. That's where I got my safety and health degree from. And I actually went in as a biology major. I was a biology physical therapy major. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a physical therapist. I played football. So I said, well, after football, I want to help people, heal and all of this stuff. And so, long story short, there was one class and one professor. And I could not get through that class, and quite frankly, I wasn't very fond of the professor, and so because of that, I actually had to change my major, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just on campus, like, hey, I got to figure out something. And a friend of mine, she told me about. She was like, hey, you should get into safety, and kind of like you, like not even never heard of that. And I'm just like, well, what is that? Crossing guard? I literally asked her this question. What is that? Crossing guards? Like, what are you talking about? You can get a degree in crossing guards? And so she laughed just like you are. And she's like, no, they deal with people in the workplace safety and stuff like that. The program was looking for minorities, because at the time it was a very small program, like 60 something students, with no minorities in the program at all. And so she was like, they were looking for minorities. They were looking for students that had a certain grade point average, which I had. So I was like, yeah, you know what? Let me do it. And then to come to find out, my football coach was one of the co-chairs of the department, so didn't even know that. So all of it just played a factor. And so I literally, and I tell people this all the time, no pun intended, I slipped, tripped, and fell into safety, you know, and that's how I got into it. And here we are, some 30 years later, and I'm still at it, still at it.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that interesting you mentioned crossing guards. In uh in the second grade, the school that I was attending in Seattle, Washington was closed. And it was the Seattle's effort at school busing. So they bused me from the school that was 2 blocks from my house to one, in another neighborhood. And because I had to catch the bus to school, back and forth to school, one of the things they said I couldn't do was be a crossing guard. I'm not sure why even, but I saw the kids out there with the helmet and the flag, and I thought it was cool. So I said, I want to do that. And he says, well, you can't do that because you're riding the bus. And that was my first opportunity at activism. And I still remember it, all these years and years later. But I wasn't the only one. But some of the kids, we kind of pitched a fit and says, well, how come we can't do that? I mean, we should be able to do that. Well, yeah. And so they actually started an activity bus for those of us who wanted to do things after school to give us an opportunity to participate, you know? And I think about all these years later, again, it just looked interesting. Um, I didn't really know that much. I didn't know how important it was, didn't know much about safety at all. And again, similar experience to you that I also, interesting things that we're finding out about one another. I also, coming out of high school, wanted to be a physical therapist. But um, it's interesting how how the scales tend to balance out over the course of time, and you end up being able to help in different ways. So what would you have told your younger self about safety? So you go back and think about some of the things you might have done in high school before you got in the profession that you didn't necessarily know about. What's some advice or something you might have told your younger self had you known a little bit more about safety back in the day?
Good, good question. Hmm. I think one of the biggest things I would have probably told my younger self is that here is a profession where you can truly give back. You can truly uh, be a protector if you are inclined in that particular area where you want to protect people. I played football and I was an offensive lineman, so it was instilled in us to protect, and so to be able to if you're looking for something where you want to be able to protect, I think you should look into safety. If you want to be in an area that is so vast, because there's so many areas to safety. You don't have to just do occupational safety. You can do, your chemical safety. There's all different types of paths that you can go down. And so if you want a profession where you can get into a lot of different veins within, I think you should look into safety. If you want a profession where, as a minority, if you're in it and you can do what you really need to do, you can make a very big impact, even for the culture. Because, as you said, it's not a lot of us in this particular in this field. So those are all the things I probably would say to a younger me or whatever. You don't have to take the, hey, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer. There are other professions out there that make a huge impact, because I tell you, there's no greater joy than when a person says, hey, I went home to my family and I appreciate you, looking out for us and making sure. Thank you for making me put my safety glasses on. My wife didn't, she saw Billy get hurt, 2 years ago, and she's always worried about me. So little things like that. That's important. So I think that's what I would probably say to my younger self.
Wow. Yeah, as you think about that, if in scenarios, particularly around work, if it's done perfectly, it never will be. I mean, because there's human beings involved. But if it's done perfectly, uh, we it would be we could make doctors and surgeons and all their jobs a lot easier because a lot of the people that they would have to see, maybe the geriatrics would have more work, but there are a lot of really young people, otherwise healthy people, who end up having all kinds of catastrophic things happen because they didn't know the difference, and they weren't in a system that was looking out for their health and safety. So now they've got a few less fingers, or they've got a bad back, or they've got bad knees, or they've lost an eye, they've got respiratory disease, they've got blah blah blah, on and on and on. And the other thing I think's really important, and a point that you made as well, I find that if I want to talk to people of color about safety, I generally have to go to the injured population because we're always overrepresented in the injured population. And I recently did a presentation in Australia talking about the connection between psychological health and safety and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the issue is that when a system is built for and by anyone, if it's built for men and you don't involve women in the design, it's not going to be as safe for women as it is for men. Just because we tend to do things that work for us, that that are point of mind for us, but not for other people. And we live in a society that is driven by middle aged to old people. Get to make all the decisions, get to decide everything. They're the ones who can vote, the ones that have the economic power. And we tend to leave out younger people, and they sometimes don't they get lessons, or they don't get all the lessons that they need to be able to help them in the future. And that gets me to what you've done around this grant. You're the only person I've ever heard to do this. I like talking to unique people. So you went out and got a grant to teach safety to high schoolers. So tell me a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah, the organization that I work with, we actually Melwood Horticulture here up in Washington D.C. area. We actually work with individuals with disabilities, be it a physical disability or cognitive disabilities, and we put folks out in the work world. And so, I'm always looking for ways to improve my safety and health program, because as you are kind of alluding to, I don't think that there's any cookie cutter. There shouldn't be anyway, a cookie cutter approach to putting or establishing a safety and health program. And so when I was working on my dissertation, one of the things that I was just curious about is what other cultural groups or whatever, how do they respond to safety? So in that, working, we were thinking about what can we do to really give a person with a disability a simple training, a simple understanding of safety, so that they could, be able to retain information and not have to really, okay, PPE means this. It's just, how can we do this? And so we started to do some things, and simplify the safety, so to speak. And so in that, I got a call one day from one of my colleagues, and she says, "Hey, there's this grant. We don't really want it. Would you guys like to do it? It's a $75,000 grant. Would you like to do it?" And so I immediately was like, "Heck yeah!" Because in my department, this is not something that we typically do. But $75,000 to do something I like, sure, I'll go. I'll go after it. And so we went after this grant, and we did a developmental grant, and they loved it, and it just took off from there. And so we got this first grant, and it was a $75,000 through OSHA Susan Harwood program that comes out every year. We got it. We did this. We did a pilot program where we were basically calling it safety basics. And so what we did was we focused on we focused on youth, individuals with disabilities, and anyone that's new to the work world. And when we say new to the work world, if there was someone that was a returning citizen, an older person that never really got out into work, and now they're just trying to get, let me go get a job or whatever. We're just trying to give them this basic safety understanding of who OSHA is, what your rights are, what are some of the things that you're going to be faced with when you come into the work world. And it's just taken off. I mean, we like I said, we got the one, and then we reapplied, and we got another, and then we got the 3 year ride on, and so it's just really taken off. So yeah, so that's kind of how that came about.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. So, yeah, I didn't realize it was more than just students. I know when we had chatted about this before, there was kind of a focus on that group, but it makes sense. There are all of these various types of folks with all kinds of abilities in certain areas and lack of ability in others, but jobs tend to be set up for a cookie cutter kind of person. You have to be able to do this or that. And I think that's one of the realizations that people are having, particularly post pandemic, and as the job market kind of gets better. I'm hearing that there are more jobs than there are people, but the issue is that It's not that there are not enough people, it's that there's not enough match in how the job is laid out and the people that are available. And what you're doing in terms of this training really helps smooth off the edges, or whatever analogy we want to use, to make sure that when folks get into the workforce, they're going to be able to do their job and not end up on the injured population. Like I mentioned in the monologue there, most well, about a third of the people who are going to get injured are going to get injured in their first year. And it's often because they don't know better. They it's not like they weren't otherwise capable. I mean, I can do the work, but I didn't know anything about that safety thing. I've never worn safety glasses before, and I got lucky. Uh, I know my hearing's a little bit bad, but I mean, I didn't know you could get earphones. I didn't know that. I know I worked in the nuclear power industry for a short period of time, and there were a group of people that they would call nuclear gypsies, who would go from plant to plant to plant and change their ID so they could keep working. And uh, these are obviously those, at least in my mind, were obviously the kind of people who didn't know all the risk associated, or had made kind of the calculate. Well, I know there might be a risk, but I need the money. And often that is still for lack of information. So when you do this training, uh, tell me a little bit more about it. How long is it? What kinds of what types of topics do you cover?
So the first iteration of the training was roughly about 3 hours. And so what we did was we actually took folks through, again, basic understanding of OSHA. Who OSHA was, what their role was, what the employees' rights were, because a lot of people didn't even know they had the right to complain if something was unsafe and things of that nature. So we did that. Then we took them through the hierarchy of controls to help them to understand how to actually be able to identify a hazard and what methods of mitigation might actually work best for them. We took them through hazardous communication, understanding the chemicals and things that they're working with. We took them through bloodborne pathogens and dealing with that, and then also slips, trips, and falls. Basic things that they're going to pretty much come in contact with. Because one of the things that we found is that most people who start out in the work world are starting out in some type of service industry. And so that's why we kind of took that particular route, because if the bulk of the people are going into the service industry, here are some of the top hazards that they're going to deal with. So that was the first iteration. The second one, we actually we focused on 1 year. I mean, one topic, as opposed to, so we took all the safety basics and we just broke them out into individual topics. So like this next year that's coming up, we're going to be focusing on hazardous communications. The last year was the year that we're in now. We're focusing on slips, trips, and falls. So we've kind of expanded. We use virtual reality to help with some of the training. So we're putting folks like in a virtual warehouse. So now they can go around and see different hazards and actually be able to take what we've just trained and actually mentally apply it and things of that nature. So yeah, that's what we're doing. So now we're like I said, we started out about 3 hours. We're probably about 2.5 hours now, 2 hours now, or whatever. And we've been expanding. We just did some work for the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. We did some work for them not too long ago. We've done some work for Excel, which is a alternative school in South Carolina. Did some work for disability location up in Pennsylvania. So we're just starting to really just branch out and looking to go other places or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, it's something, interesting point you made in your description is that you're actually taking time to help people figure out how to identify hazards. Because I think that ultimately, that might be the most important thing that we can do as safety professionals, regardless of what the rules are. Because who needs the rules if I never get hurt? I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I don't need to know what OSHA is or any of that kind of stuff. If I never get hurt, I don't ever have to file a complaint. I don't ever have to get workers' comp. I don't have to do any of that. But what tends to be lacking is that people just don't know how to recognize a hazard. They don't, because again, no, it's again when we go to primary school, they teach us how to read and how to write and how to do arithmetic and how to do a little bit of social interaction. But unfortunately, what most of our K through 12 system does is it teaches us how to obey. It teaches us how to obey, follow rules, and be in order. But it doesn't. Again, it doesn't teach us that not everything that people are going to tell me to do is necessarily good for me, and that might be a hazard to me. That might be okay for them, but for me, that's going to be an issue. Whether I have a identified physical or cognitive disability or not, that doesn't work for me. It may work for all the other people, but doesn't work for me. And simply teaching people how to recognize that that is a hazard for you to be able to speak up and say you have a right to speak up and let people know that. And perhaps these jobs might last a little bit longer, and they also might last with people being a little bit healthier.
Yeah, I think you're spot. I think you're spot on, and I think where we take that even further is one of the other things that we do is we have folks go through what we call a simple JHA, a job hazard analysis, and so using that hierarchy of control, we talk about JHAs. And we really just give them three simple questions. I mean, obviously, you can look at a JHA and they have all different, the rat codes and all of this stuff. But it's really three simple questions. Hey, what am I doing? How can it hurt me? And how can I control it? And we really get them to understand that because when they walk out, it's even though we're talking about safety, you could actually use that for anything. You know what I mean? And so they walk away with a really understanding of, like you said, I can identify the fact that hey, that could hurt me, but now I can ask the question, well, what am I doing with this hazard? How can it hurt me? And then you know what are some simple things I can do to avoid it? And it's just like light bulbs go off and just like, oh wow, this is actually pretty cool. And so I find that a little bit rewarding, especially when folks walk away fully understanding that.
Do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the Flourish DX Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow Flourish DX on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the Flourish DX Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
So, do you have some stories that come to mind of people who've been in the class that when it was over, you thought uh, they really got something out of it that you didn't expect, or any kind of stories like that from from past students?
Yeah, we have a few stories like that. So much so that typically when I'm in a class, I'm always scanning. I'm always looking to see like what kid sticks out and not stick out in terms of just they're just outgoing, but which one sticks out that really gets safety. And out of all of the classes, you're if we do a class, we typically sometimes will do 3-4 classes a week. You would probably have 2 to 3 students that just actually stick out in that particular class. We've had one student that took the class and we brought him on for an internship. We paid, gave him, I think we paid $3,000 for 2 weeks. We brought them in, showed them the whole safety and health profession, allowed them to help with, drills and understanding insurance, and all of this was based off of the fact of this kid showed, Daniel is his name actually. This kid showed he showed an aptitude for safety, and just just really wanting to cultivate that. I've been in places, the Royal Farms. I don't know if you guys have. Do you guys have Royal Farms down in Atlanta? I don't know, but we have Royal Farms.
It rings a bell, but it may not be
Yeah.
here. But
So we had a couple kids that worked at Royal Farms, and I remember going in one time to get some chicken, and one of the kids was back. She was like, "Oh, I remember all that safety stuff you taught us, or whatever." So yeah, I mean, numerous stories. I have one. It's interesting because, again, new to the work world, we had an individual who actually was a returning citizen. He took the class, and he is now actually on track, because I'm teaching. It's funny. It's funny, full circle. I'm teaching him OSHA 30 now, and he's on track to be one of their safety, professionals on within the company. But it all started from a safety basics course. So yeah, numerous stories, and it's not, like I said, not just with youth, but I even have an adult who is now really on the safety track or whatever. So yeah, so it's been powerful.
yeah, that's just so important. As I and you may have heard this story. I actually heard it at a National Safety Council conference a few years back, but it was one of the former OSHA administrators, or may have been the administrator at the time, that showed a video of a kid called, his name was Laquan Davis. You may have heard the story. He worked at a Bacardi bottling plant in Jacksonville, Florida. This has been some years ago. And it showed, the video shows, you can find it on YouTube right now. It shows him taking a picture, taking a picture before his first day. And it was his first real job, 21 years old. He goes in this bottling plant. They show some of the security footage of him walking about and kind of doing what he was told. They had a bottling machine that was damaged in some way, so they shut it down but did not lock it out. You know where this is going. And sent the kid to sweep up some of the broken glass that was under the machine. He does that, comes back and says, "Hey, I've got that done." And they send him, they weren't quite finished, so they send him back to, says, there's a couple more bottles that have broken. He goes back to the same place. They get the machine working, they thought, when they heard a loud crash, and 2,000 pounds of liquor crushed this kid to death on his first day on the job. And the moral of the story is that you could die your first day on the job from a hazard that could have otherwise been recognized. But they didn't really give him any training. They sat him in the lunchroom for an hour, hour and a half, and told him to watch some videos, and that was it. First day, first day on the job. And the thing that really concerns me about the workplace in general is, why is it that we would ever put people to work to do something that could injure or kill them and never tell them? Don't tell them. So go to work, go figure it out.
I share your same sentiments in terms of just that initial training, and how important that is. It's just really, really important to get people acclimated the proper way. And it does a wonder for the individual, and even for a business, because I mean, you just think about, like you just said, just all of the stuff that went into hiring that young kid, and then now all the stuff that goes into, or went into, having to deal with the death and all of that stuff. So even outside of just the ethical standpoint of protecting your employees, there's a huge financial aspect that goes to it. So yeah, I'm with you. Training, especially that initial training, you got to get them. You got to get them, and you got to stay on them. To really help push that culture or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so um, this podcast is focused on psychological health and safety, and the definition that I use is, the one from my research that says a psychosocial hazard is something that's perceived or experienced by the person as a threat, that cause them to behave in a different way. And again, I back to the training that you're providing. I believe that people are better able to address a hazard when they know there is one. I mean, if I can recognize it, I go, oh, that's what that is. I know what to do. And the things that they have to do, again, to your point, they're not complicated. I could have simply not walked across that thing, or I could have, walked around, or I could have, it was easy. I mean, it was a simple fix, but because I didn't recognize it, I end up paying the ultimate price by losing a body part, or actually getting killed. And the training would have taken 5 minutes. It would have taken that long. And it amazes me how sometimes organizations don't think about, say, well, we got to get that person working. No, you got to get that person working safely, because as much as you know highly competent, qualified people are your greatest asset, poorly trained people are your biggest liability.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
are.
I agree.
And it gets kind of everybody in trouble.
And I really like what you just said about that highly competent, because I've had a number of debates with folks in terms of, do you give people safety bonuses or not give them safety bonuses, and that's probably a whole nother discussion. But the main thing that you just said is highly competent. And being highly competent is what you're saying, knowing what your safety rules are, knowing what the safety hazards are. That's a part of your competency to do the job. It's not this ad hoc, hey, I'm gonna do this. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. By the way, do that safety thing. It's no, I'm going to do my job, and I'm going to do it in a safe way because I'm fully competent in what it takes to do this job effectively and safely. So I really like what you, and if you don't mind, I might just take a little bit of that because I like that, highly competency thing or whatever. That's very important in this safety world. Yeah, very important.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's, the other thing that makes again what you're doing so important is that you're going to populations who often get left out of the conversations. And they get left out for all kinds of reasons. And they're not all negative, nefarious, they just kind of, we, for example, you talked about returning citizens, and if you're using the same, lingo that I've heard, that's folks who've been in, the juvenile justice or the correctional system, or got arrested for whatever. But when people come, they've paid their debt to society and just want to come out and do a job and make a living. Why is it that they're often relegated to the jobs that have the most hazards? I mean, an example is, I was in the fire rescue service for a number of years. A lot of our wildland fires right now are being, uh, the folks that we send out to do them are people that are in jails and prisons. That's, we send them out there to take the risk and to deal with the hazards associated. And most of them get decent training. Most of them do, but in some cases, not necessarily so. And even after the fact, sometimes they can go out and do it while they're in jail or in prison, but can't get a job after. And so I don't think we're doing ourselves any favors as a society to limit people that way. People should be able to get a job and be able to do that job for as long as they want to do it without having to file a workers' comp claim, without, getting a bad back. I mean, to the point you made about the financial cost, last I heard, the National Safety Council suggests that it's going to be $42,000, I believe, if the person gets injured and has to go to the hospital, and 1.4 million if they get killed. That's on average. So it costs, other than the ethical part, it costs a lot of money to replace the person and all that. And it could have been solved by a 2 or 3 hour class that, if I'm not mistaken, this training is offered for free of charge to most
Yeah,
people.
yeah. So the training is all paid through the grant, and so for us, it's just a simple call us up and and say, hey, we would love for you guys to come out and do your training, your safety basics training, and we're there. We, like I said, we've been expanding our footprint outside of the DC area now, and so in addition to even training folks, we have a component where we're doing a train the trainer, so that we teach you how to do this so that you're able to train your folks as you see fit or whatever. So the grant has been amazing. Working with OSHA and the folks over in the Susan Harwood Grant Department, it's just amazing. And I'm just glad that for the last, at this point, the last 4 years, we just really been able to, touch so many folks. And I think I looked at the last statistics. We're probably close up to roughly about 3,500 folks that we've actually trained, and the majority of them are actually students. Actually, the majority of students, first time workers. McDonald's, again, your service industries, and even in that, we're touching. About 80% of those are folks that have some type of disability or documented disability, be it a cognitive IEP or something of that nature. So that's even better because, as you said, especially when you have a disability, you're just looking for an opportunity. But now to go into a place that where you got the opportunity and you're armed, as you said, competent in terms of what needs to be done for that job, it's just that's when you asked me earlier, what do I say to the younger person? That's what I say. You can really touch the world. Like you really can.
Wow. Wow. So I kind of toss that out there and you breeze past it, but you're telling me, and I want to make sure that people understand this, that there are probably small businesses, even large businesses, with, oh man, that safety stuff, we're not really sure if we're gonna be able to we've only got like three people, and this is Charlie, and I don't know, we'll just kind of get him out there to figure it out. You're telling folks that this training is totally free of charge. And there are thousands and thousands of school districts across this country, thousands and thousands of kids, particularly that are getting ready for the workforce, who could get this training for absolutely nothing. And all they'd have to do is contact you. So how would they do that? How would they get
Yeah, yeah, you're 100% right. It's funny. I literally have to. It's a weird sell because it's like everybody's like, what comes with that? I'm like, no, it's no charge. We got it through the grant, and there was one organization they just did not believe it was free, and I'm like, yeah, it is. So for those that believe, yeah, they can just contact us. Again, I'm at Melwood Horticultural. My email address is jhunter@melwood.org. That's JHUNTER at MELWOOD.org. Or they could just call 301-599-8000 and ask for me. And we can get it set up. Yeah, we can get it set up. Get you on the calendar.
Wow. 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 Yeah, that's fantastic. I got to tell you. I mean, there are a lot of challenges and issues out there relative to safety that sometimes all you need is the opportunity, and particularly when that opportunity can, all it takes is your time. It's the opportunity to really, as you said, to really change the world and to change, because that person who, again, if they're able to pick up a few skills in this class and not get injured at work, they can also help their coworkers. Hey, that's a hazard. If you do that, here's what could happen. There are not enough safety professionals in the world to fix all this stuff. And some of it is about just arming people with the basic information that they need. Yeah, I can recall in some of the local governments I've worked where the workers' comp benefit isn't sometimes, it isn't big. We used to tell people that if you're willing to go out and get yourself hurt at work, what you're also willing to do is take a 60% or 40% cut in pay. That's basically what you're doing. And you can save yourself that cut in pay by simply, that's what we give you, those safety shoes and glasses and helmets and, tell you to pay attention to the SDS to help you. I mean, it really is to help you so you don't have to take that cut and pay. And so, the company or the organization doesn't have to do without your service because that's important as well. But yeah, it's sharing this information where people live and where they can understand it. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, this great conversation. I again, I want to continue to applaud the work that you're doing, and hopefully there are folks who are even listening now go like, "Wow, I need to reach out to those people. There's something going on down at the school," and yeah, and perhaps overwhelm you such that you have to get additional folks to work on the grant. Anything you'd like to leave with that we've not chatted about before we conclude? Well, thanks, Dr. Hunter, for your for the work that you're doing and for your contributions to this episode. So, if you're watching or listening to this podcast for the first time, welcome. I hope something you've heard will bring you back next time. Previous episodes of the podcast can be found at psychealthandsafetyusa.com. You can watch, like, subscribe, and share the podcast on the Flourish DX YouTube page. And please do join the Psych Health and Safety USA movement by connecting and becoming a subscriber on LinkedIn. Until next time, stay tuned and look out for the next episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. Tune in each week for new episodes of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. If you have a story or know of one that needs to be told, reach out to us on LinkedIn or send an email to David at id2-solutions.com or go to the Flourish DX website at flourishdx.com. We'll see you next time.